everyone. Now we figured it out. I'm so sorry about that. I tried going live like 4 different times. Facebook has changed their live settings apparently, and I couldn't quite figure it out. And so here we go. Welcome to #Real Talk with Rachel Dawn, episode 5. And tonight, it's just us. It's just you and me. And so we are going to be picking up our discussion that we left off last month. So last month, we started talking about this idea of purpose. You know, what the heck am I even here for? And we went into the idea of, you know, am I even created for a purpose? What does that look like? How do I move towards that? How do I figure out what that is? And so we discussed all of that. So if you would, comment, let me know that you're here. Like this video, share this video as we're getting started. I'm going to kind of small talk a little bit as we're getting started. So to give other people time to catch up and come on. But yeah, comment, let me know that you're here. And awesome. I already see one comment. That's my husband. Hey, babe. So yeah, but then I also want to know, so who did the homework assignment for last month, which was to go through the the Finding Your Purpose, like exercise, worksheet, whatever, where you made 2 lists, things that you're passionate about and then things that you're naturally gifted in. If you did that, kind of raise your hand or say hey, or tell me what that looked like. As you started to make those 2 lists, did you start to see some, did you start to Venn diagram them, if you will, to pull out a really cool elementary school word? To start to see some correlations of where God might want to be taking you with your purpose. Tell me about that in the comments. And like I said, you know, I said this last month and I also said this in my book, but when I made those lists, for me, the biggest thing that it did was help create clarity in my life. So it allowed me to eliminate distractions, because pretty much if it wasn't on one of those 2 lists, if it wasn't something taking me toward what God was calling me to, what God had created me for, then I wasn't spending any mental time, energy, resources, anything in my life on that. So again, if you haven't made those 2 lists yet, definitely do that. Make a list of the things that you're passionate about, a list of the things that you're naturally good at, your talents and abilities, and start looking at those lists side by side. And I promise it will help you start figuring out what your purpose is, or how and why and what God even created you for. So if anybody is having trouble with that, I actually pulled out a couple books. I don't think we mentioned these last month, but if you're having issues with that, you can, you know, there are all sorts of personality tests and different exams that you can take about yourself, kind of self-discovery tests. But one of the most helpful things that I read and kind of took a long time ago, I know the books are backwards. I don't know how to fix that, but I will tell you about it and I'll show you the cover so you can see it. But this is called Personality Plus by Florence Littauer. I read this the first time when I was 16 and I took the personality test, and really it just helps you understand at your core personality what your natural gifts and talents and strengths are, and then what your natural weaknesses are, so you can kind of avoid those and work in your strengths. So definitely, if you haven't read that, if you haven't taken this test, Personality Plus is a great place to start. I also was recommended this book. I haven't done it yet myself, I'll be perfectly honest with you, but it's called Strengths Finder. This is 2.0 version by Tom Rath. So this helps you find kind of your work strengths, your ministry strengths, I believe. It focuses on ministry strengths. It was referred to me by people in ministry, so I assumed that. But anyway, so definitely check out that one if you need help there. There's also a test online. I'll post the link afterwards, but it's like a 5-fold ministry test that helps you understand your spiritual gifts as well. And so again, if you're having trouble figuring out, maybe you got stuck there. Hey, I don't know what I'm good at. Check out some of those resources that'll help you make those lists. So now that's just a little bit of small talk, a little bit of catching everybody up. Hey, Kristen, I'm glad you're here. And so we'll go ahead and get started for this month. So, well, first of all, let's talk about examples. So examples of making those 2 lists and figuring out what your purpose is. Maybe if you are kind of stuck there again, So, for example, my friend Leslie, I tell her story in my book, Now What? She was hit by a drunk driver, and at the time that seemed very devastating. You know, what can I do with this? It's kind of derailed me from my purpose and what I thought life was going to look like. But now, today, she travels around and speaks to groups about the dangers of drunk driving and is able to kind of preventatively work against that. And so she's turned this negative situation in her life, taken her gifts and talents and abilities, and applied that to something good and into a purpose that she can use. For me, one of the things on my list that I am super passionate about is freedom. And I mean that in every sense of the word. But when I made my two lists, freedom was on the list of things that I'm passionate about. And on my list of strengths was writing and speaking also, but writing was the big thing. And so I have found a way to take writing to in a public forum to be able to lead people into freedom, out of bondage of shame and guilt and past mistakes or failures. So I can write about that and help people become more free. So can you kind of see how these examples are pulling together? A third one that I thought about is if you're passionate about teaching, or if you're skilled in teaching, or both, maybe that looks like that you are a teacher. Or maybe that looks like you tutor neighborhood kids one day a week. Or maybe that looks like you teach in your the youth group at your church or in Sunday school or something like that. So that's a real practical way that you can take your natural gifts and abilities and apply that, even though you don't have to be in that field necessarily. You can still be operating within your purpose, within your strengths, within your passions. So just some good ideas to get started there. But now that you kind of have an idea, you're starting to grasp this idea that you have a purpose, you're starting to see maybe what that is, what that looks like. Hey, Mom. Then where do you go from here? Like, what do you do next? How do you get started? Maybe you have gotten started, but you feel stuck. Maybe you feel overwhelmed. Maybe you feel unqualified for this purpose that you can see this vision and this purpose and this dream for your life, but you feel like, oh, I don't even know how to get started in that, or there's no way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first step, the first thing that you're going to need to do to get started and starting moving toward your purpose, once you've kind of identified what that is and what that looks like, is tell someone what your dream is. But there's a caveat to this. You have to be very selective with who those people are. Because you are certainly going to need cheerleaders. You're going to need support people. You're going to need your tribe, whatever you want to call it. But who has experienced that there are going to be people in your life who aren't those people, who aren't cheerleader types, who aren't going to be supportive? And so what Jesus says in Matthew 7, Matthew 7 verse 6, the way that he phrases it is, do not cast your pearls before swine. Hey, Mama Jewel, my mother-in-law just logged on too. It's a family night. So Jesus says, don't cast your pearls before swine. And what he means by that is the things that are most precious to you in your heart. So, and that certainly applies to your dreams, your desires, the visions that you have for your life, the things that you're passionate about. Not everybody is going to get that. Not everybody is going to be a part of that. And so you absolutely can reserve the right to keep those things in to yourself for certain people. And the rest of that verse says, don't cast your pearls before swine, because they will trample your pearls and then come and attack you. And again, who has experienced, tell me if you have, I can't be the only one that's experienced this, is you've shared your dream and vision with a certain person or a certain group of people, and they've made fun of you, or they've chided you for it, or they've scoffed at you, or who do you think you are, and you're not qualified for that, and whatever the things may be that they say, but they just don't see it. They don't see your vision. They're not supposed to be a part of it, and that's okay. Not everybody is going to be. I give you permission to rest in that not everybody's going to see your vision. Not everybody's going to see your dream. Not everybody's going to believe in your dream, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that it's not right. And those people who say negative things against you, or who say those doubtful things, it doesn't mean that they're right. just keep listening to God, keep plugging in with Him, and find the people who are going to be supportive of you. If you don't have somebody in your life who can be that cheerleader for you right now, tell me, message me what your dream and what your vision and what your passion is. I will be that cheerleader for you, I promise. But whatever you do, don't try to go it alone. You definitely need to tell people about it because you are going to need that support system as you start moving towards your dream. A second thing that happens when you tell somebody your dream, or you tell somebody what your vision is, or you tell somebody what you want your life to look like and these passions that you have, is it automatically instills this accountability for you. Because once you've said it out loud, you can't just keep talking about it. You actually have to do something about it. And so, but that's a good thing, right? So telling somebody about it, they can help keep you accountable in moving toward that dream and making sure that you're staying on track with it. And it's not like I don't know, like a pressured or sarcastic, like, oh yeah, how far along are you with that? Or remember when you said that one thing, how's that going? I mean, what you want it to be is somebody who's going to be like, hey, in my example, for my life, I told a bunch of people that my goal and my dream was to have my first book published by the time I was 30. It didn't happen. I was 31, I think, by the time it happened. But I did have people in my life who kept encouraging me through that, who would bring it up to me when they saw me. Hey, how's that going? Is there anything I can do to help? Those type of things. Those are the kind of people that you want. For example, like a friend of mine, his dream was to make movies. That's what he wants to do. And so he enrolled himself in art school and he started walking down that path. And so for that Christmas, I bought him like this director set of art decor with little film reels and the little clapper thing. I bought him all that stuff that he could hang up in his bedroom just to say, in a very real and tangible way, hey, I believe in you. I believe in this dream that you have, and I'm here in your corner to cheer you on towards that. So those are the type of people that you're looking for. Definitely tell somebody about your dream, but be wise, be discerning in who those people are, and you don't have to tell everybody. So I give you permission in that. The second thing that you're going to need to do when you start moving toward your purpose is go do it. Stop making excuses. Stop waiting for the time to be right or for you to be ready or for everything to be perfect. It's never going to happen. You just have to start. Like we talked about last month, do what you can where you are with what you have. Just take that next step in front of you. That's all you have to worry about. So, there's something else I was going to say about this. Oh, you're never going to be ready. All you can do is break it down into small steps and small phases, and then just take that next step in front of you. That's all you have to do. Your whole vision can seem really big and really overwhelming. You don't have to do all of it tomorrow, but you do need to do something tomorrow. So figure out what that next step is for you and take that next step. I read this excerpt recently again from Draw the Circle by Mark Batterson. This is the 40-day prayer journey, and it was on day 20 because I'm doing the prayer journey for a second time. So day 20 says, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. And that makes me laugh because how many of us would never do, we need to know exactly where we're going, how long it's going to take, what the route is that we're going to get there. There's not a chance we would just start driving into the wilderness or whatever just because that's what we felt we were supposed to do. But that's exactly what Abraham, this father of faith and this hero of faith, did. It says that's where he was going to later receive his inheritance, and he did not know where he was going, but he went anyway. I love that. That's in Hebrews 11:8. So then Mark goes on to say, Abraham didn't know the final destination, but that didn't keep him from taking the first step of this journey. What's the first step or the next step that you need to take right now? Do you know what that is? What does that look like for you? What is that first step of you getting started? Do you know what that looks like yet? If not, maybe put some time into thinking about that. If you made your 2 lists, but you haven't started going after that yet, if you haven't made that first step yet, maybe tonight after this video is over, you sit down with a sheet of paper or your journal or whatever, and you go, okay, what does that first step look like? Or what does that next step look like? He goes on to say, if you take the first step, God will reveal the second step. The problem is that most of us want a 25-year plan before we'll ever get started. We want to know exactly where we need to go and how we're going to get there and how long it's going to take, but that's not the way that God works. God gives us just enough revelation, just enough grace, just enough strength for that day, for that next step. And why does he do that? It's really, really frustrating, don't get me wrong, but he does it because he wants us to remain daily reliant or dependent on him, right? He doesn't give us the whole revelation at once. One, because we wouldn't be able to handle it all. It would be too overwhelming, for one thing. But for the other thing is, he doesn't want us dependent on the revelation. He wants us dependent on him. And so he gives us just enough for that next step. But you're never, ever, ever going to be ready. And just understand that. You're never going to feel ready enough. You'll never be ready to get married. You'll never be ready to have kids. You'll never be ready to start a business or go back to school or move to the mission field. You'll never be ready financially, emotionally, or spiritually. You'll never have enough faith, enough cash, or enough courage. And if you're looking for an excuse, you'll always find one. Mark says, I've never been, and I'm sure I will never be, ready for anything God has called me to do. Talk about it, me either. But if you wait until you're ready, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. Just so you know. I have hot tea tonight. What are you guys drinking? Coffee, cider. It's chilly out there. So, wine. Wine will warm you up. Anyway, so that's the third thing. So you'll never be ready, and just understand that. Here's kind of a side note that goes along with this point. And I'm trying to think of how to say this as delicately as possible. But you don't have to love the daily work or all the steps that move you toward your purpose. Or you can say it this way. You don't have to be passionate about the things that will get you to your passion. And I feel like, I feel like, and I know I'm not the only one who understands this, actually, a friend of mine, Mark Nathan, wrote this book a couple years ago called The Delusion of Passion, Why Millennials Struggle to Find Success. And I haven't read the book yet. Don't tell Mark. I have had it since it came out, but I haven't read it yet. I've only skimmed it, but I have heard him give a couple talks, from the book. Excuse me. My scratchy throat is getting better. But what he talks about is this phenomenon that's going on right now in our culture, in our society, in this whole millennial generation. Is that they've been told their whole lives, go after what you're passionate about, do what you're passionate about, just make sure that you love what you do and all these things. And what Mark talks about is that's not really accurate advice or accurate information, or it's only half accurate. And he says that getting that advice only sets people up to fail. Because a lot of times, the things that you're passionate about don't provide a living for your family, don't let you eat or have a roof over your head, or they don't make an impact. A lot of times, it can be very selfish, just doing whatever you love doing. It doesn't impact other people. It doesn't leave a legacy. It doesn't, it doesn't do all these other things. Sometimes it can, by all means. But what he talks about is, this entire generation gets caught up in this idea that if I'm doing what I'm passionate about, then every day is going to be all roses and sunshine and butterflies, and I'm going to love it, and I'm always going to be happy. And that's just not true. I have a friend who started a photography business because she's passionate about photography. It's absolutely what she loves. But then she has to spend hours upon hours editing and doing marketing and all these other things that just aren't that fun. For me, I'm passionate about writing, obviously. I love writing. But here's what goes along with writing: editing and marketing and design and all these things that super suck. And so I don't love any of that stuff, but it's a package deal. And so in order to go after my passion, which is being able to affect people with words and inspire people to change and grow and whatever by writing, I have to do everything that goes along with that. And so you're not going to love every day or the daily work that goes into what you're passionate about. What you need to keep in mind is what's your end goal. And this is what Mark talks about this a lot in his life. He talks about creating a life that you can be passionate about rather than just living for passion or trying to discover what your passion is. Creating this life. So, again, keep that big picture in mind. What do I want my life to look like? What do I want the end goal to be? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? Rather than what's comfortable today or what makes me feel good today. And athletes get this, right? This is such a common sense thing for athletes. All athletes understand that you don't just show up and walk onto the field and get to be the star of the game. There's all sorts of training and preparation and hours and days of things that go on behind the scenes before you ever walk onto that field. And so it's very much the same no matter what your passion is, no matter what your dream is, no matter what you want to go after in life. What you don't want to do is get to the end of your life and have just picked a daily life of comfort and easiness and whatever because you never wanted to get out of your comfort zone. You never wanted to stretch yourself. You never wanted to, for it to be hard. And so then you get to the end of your life and you look back and you haven't actually gotten anywhere near that end goal that you wanted. You're way off track and your life doesn't look anything like you wanted it to look like. That's what we don't want to happen. And so understand there is going to be some discomfort. There is going to be some really hard stuff. There's going to be some really suck days, but that all is a part of it. And so understand that. Actually, speaking of athletes and kind of this whole idea of training and behind the scenes, my favorite quotes along this line of thinking are by Muhammad Ali. And my favorite one, it says, you may have heard it before, the fight is won or lost far away from witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym, and out there on the road long before I dance under those lights, he says. Then another quote that is attributed to him says, I hated every minute of training, but I told myself, don't quit, suffer now, and live the rest of your life as a champion. So just bear that in mind. You don't have to be passionate about the daily work that goes into what you're passionate about. The third thing that you need to learn to do when going towards your passion, going towards your dream, whatever your calling, your purpose is you have to be ready to do it afraid. And I hear Joyce Meyer talk about this quite a bit in several different contexts, but she talks about how very often something that you know that God is calling you to do, you just don't feel okay with. Like you do have fear, you do have insecurity surrounding that topic. She says, and this is something that I struggle with because I feel like if my faith is big enough, if my faith is good enough, I'm never going to be afraid, right? And that's a lie. And so what she says is when you feel that fear, you just do it anyway. And there's going to be a lot of times in life, in different circumstances, that you're just going to have to do it afraid. And so I was recently reading in one of my devotionals on the Bible app that I'm doing by Rick Warren, and he says this quote to start, and then the rest of the little excerpt here. He says, even if your voice shakes, even if you feel paralyzed and your heart sinks, your palms sweat, you can't make a decision, your mind questions, no matter how afraid you may feel, when God calls you to do something, you can do it afraid. It doesn't matter what the circumstances look like, and it doesn't matter what your feelings are telling you. God wants you to live beyond your feelings and not be controlled by them. Every time you give in, this is huge. Every time you give in to fear, you're missing out on something amazing God has for you. Let that sink in for a second. Every time that you give in to a fearful thought or feeling or whatever, you're missing out on something amazing that God is calling you to. I have a story that actually goes along with this. I wasn't planning on telling it, but I have told it before from stage in the context of overcoming your fears. And that is, I actually wrote a blog about it too. You can find it. It's a couple years old. It's called Number 56. Skydiving was number 56 on my bucket list. And it was something that I always knew that I wanted to do. I couldn't wait to go skydiving. It was definitely something I was going to do at some point in my life. Well, 2 summers ago, my best friend was turning 40. And so for his 40th birthday, he wanted to go skydiving. I said, great, sign me up. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be awesome. And so my husband was going to come along, but he ended up having another commitment that weekend, so he couldn't come. So I was going by myself, with my friends, but it was just going to be me. And so we start getting closer and closer to the event. And you had to watch this mandatory safety video before you could show up that day. And I mean, it knew, like when you logged on online, like it tracked that, and you had to watch the video all the way through and like certify, sign at the end that you watched it. So there was no getting out of it. And, the guy starts talking, it was very doom and gloom. The guy starts talking about like everything that can go wrong when you go skydiving. He starts talking about no parachute is perfect, no parachute packer is perfect, no skydive company is perfect, no plane is perfect, no weather is going to be perfect for skydiving. All these things can go wrong. No instructor is perfect. They make mistakes. All these things he starts talking about, and that it's the like waiver that they have to give, like you could die or be seriously injured by skydiving. Like you have to sign off that, yes, I know this, right? And so I watched that video, and up till that point, I hadn't been anything but excited. And I watched that video, and those seeds of fear and doubt got planted in my mind. And so I start that night, excuse me, there's things going on my screen. That night I really started getting overwhelmed at the idea of going the next day. And I was kind of sitting in the shower, and all this stuff is playing on a loop in my head, and I'm kind of freaking out. I get out of the shower, I'm sitting on our bed, and I'm kind of freaking out. My husband comes in and, are you excited about tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, I'm excited. Well, what's wrong? You're being really quiet. Well, I'm just a little bit nervous. And he's like, well, if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. And I'm like, no, I definitely want to go. Like, I'm going to go skydiving at some point in my life, so it might as well be tomorrow. And he's like, well, you just don't have to go if you don't want to go. If you're scared or whatever, you don't have to go. And I just look at him because I didn't want to. We've already had a real talk series about your words, right? Well, we've talked about thoughts, but your words go along with that. So I didn't want to verbalize the fearful thoughts that I was having. So I didn't quite know what to say to him, but I just looked at him and I said, I don't think that's what I need you to say to me right now. And he said, well, what do you need me to say to you? And I said, I just need you to pray. Like, let's just pray. And so he starts praying with me, and it was so crazy. My husband had not seen the safety video that I had seen. And we sit down to pray, and he literally starts naming off item by item that was in that video, that he asked God for protection on my instructor, on the plane, on the weather, on my parachute, on every latch and harness, that everything would operate appropriately the way it was designed. I mean, word for word for word. And he had not seen the video. It was divine, you guys. Like, God was just downloading all the information that I needed to hear in that moment to give me peace. So he prayed over all of that. As soon as he's done, I feel totally great. The pressure's off, the scaredness is gone. Like, I'm just pumped. I'm ready to go. And so the next day we went skydiving. It was amazing, you guys. It's not even remotely scary. It's awesome. Total adrenaline rush, of course. But anyway, and afterwards, here's the cool part, is that afterwards, when I was thinking about it, I got so pissed thinking about how I almost let my enemy talk me out of having this incredible experience. Now, do I believe that? I mean, I'm torn about it. Do I believe that God wanted me to jump out of a plane and this is something that He ordained and blessed or whatever? No, I mean, maybe, probably not. But the point is that I got to experience this exhilaration of overcoming fear, of kicking the lying enemy and those fearful thoughts right in the teeth. And if I had chickened out, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have gotten to experience that. So every time that you give in to fear, you're missing out on something amazing that God has for you. And just remember that. You can do it afraid. Proverbs 16:9 says, "In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." And the Hebrew word for establishes is kun. The Hebrew word kun. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Kun. And it's translated in that verse to determines, prepares, provides, sets in place, directs, firmly decides, and makes secure. So if you plug that into that verse, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord prepares their steps. The Lord sets in place their steps. The Lord directs and firmly decides their steps. So again, it's your job to take that next step, and God is going to make sure that that step is right, and He's going to reveal the next step to you. But your job is to just take the next step, even if you're not ready, even if you're afraid. The fourth thing that you need to know or to do to start moving towards your purpose is get yourself a mentor. A mentor, a counselor, an advisor, whatever you want to call this person. I call them mentors. I literally have a mentor for practically every area of my life. Spiritually, relationally, financially. I have a mentor for speaking. I have a mentor for writing. Literally, I have mentors for every area of my life because I couldn't operate without them. And what you want in a mentor is, first of all, everybody has advice to give, right? Everybody has opinions and advice that they will happily give you, most of the time unsolicited. When it comes to selecting a mentor, what you want to make sure is that you find somebody who's been where you are, but is further ahead and is further down that road on the path that you want to take. That they've been where you've been, but now they're ahead. They have success or fruit or whatever you want to call it in that area. It doesn't make sense to take advice from somebody who doesn't have the fruit for what they're telling you, right? So, somebody who doesn't know how to handle their finances well, who's always in debt, who's always overdrafting their bank account, that's not somebody that you want to take financial advice from, right? So just think of that in any area that you're looking to get a mentor. Find somebody who has been where you've been and that they're further ahead now, that is willing to take you along that route, to take you by the hand, to give you advice, and get in their back pocket. Talk to them as much as you can, pick their brain, take them out for coffee, take them out for lunch, take them out for dinner, whatever. Ask them everything that you can think of. Ask them if you can stay in regular contact with them to bounce things off of them as they come up. But you're definitely gonna want to have a mentor. The Bible talks about this over and over and over again, the value of mentorship. Proverbs talks about wise men walk with a multitude of counselors. It also says, he who walks with the wise grows wise. In Proverbs 15:22, it says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. And so this is something that... And so just so you understand, Proverbs, this is kind of neat. Proverbs was written by Solomon, who was considered the wisest man to ever live. He was also extremely wealthy, one of the wealthiest men to ever live, if not the wealthiest man to ever live. But even though he was as wise as he was himself, and the wisdom that he received from the Lord, that was something that he was gifted with, he still saw wisdom and fruit in surrounding himself with counselors and advisors and mentors. So if the wisest man that ever lived thinks that having a mentor is a good idea, we probably should too. So definitely get a mentor. If you're struggling in this area, I can't promise that I have all your answers, but feel free to reach out to me. I have access to a lot of resources, and if I can't help you directly, I would love to try to connect you with somebody else that I think can help you in that area. And so definitely seek out mentorship. It is so valuable, so important. The fifth thing that I want to talk about in going after your purpose, this is the final point. Going after your purpose, starting to move toward what you know God has created you for, what He's called you to. One thing I didn't say this already, but I think I said it last month is, and I say this a lot, you don't have to be in ministry to be in ministry. And so, like for example, at my job, I told a story last month. So I write and speak and do all those things, but then I do still work a full-time job also right now. And at my job, I have been able to affect people in the same way that I can in just doing ministry, if you will. You know, my job is I sit down and have one-on-one, face-to-face meetings with people. And so in conversation, I'm able to just be real and vulnerable and you know, whatever. And that gives other people permission to be vulnerable and talk about themselves and about their life and their story. And so I have been in meetings, like I told you guys this story last month. I've been in meetings where people have cried, where people have hugged me, like more than once. Quite frequently, people hug me before I leave in the 30 minutes that I've spent with them. And so, so again, you don't have to be in ministry to be in ministry. And that goes along with kind of our fifth and final point, is that it's okay to start small. So whatever you feel like God is calling you to do, again, you don't have to do all of it. You don't have to do everything tomorrow. It's okay to start small. Don't ever feel like what you're doing right now is insignificant. Because it's not. It all matters. In fact, in Luke, Jesus says, whoever is faithful in the small matters will be faithful with the large ones. So what I know is that God actually tests us in small things, in small relationships, in small circumstances, in small responsibilities, to see if we are ready or capable of handling larger responsibilities, larger groups of people, whatever the case may be. And so just bear that in mind. You know, Joyce Meyer talks about this. You know, she talks about how her ministry started with 25 people at a home Bible study in her living room, just like we're sitting in now in my living room. But that's how it started. And when she had her very first conference, there were 65 women there. I went to her conference in St. Louis last month. There were 23,000 there this year. So she started with 65 and it's grown to 23,000 in 30 plus years. You know, that didn't happen overnight. And so understand, but if she hadn't been faithful and thankful and appreciative for those 65 people when she started, she probably wouldn't have gotten to the 23,000. And she talks about that all the time. I've heard her tell so many stories about how her ministry was delayed over periods of time because her attitude wouldn't be right. She tells these funny stories about how she used to sit in her house and watch other TV preachers and be criticizing them. Like, I preach so much better than them. Why am I not on TV? Well, Joyce, maybe that's the problem, because you're criticizing other people and you have this haughty, prideful attitude. She's talking about herself. But it's so true. And so, you know, not every day am I on TV interviews or doing book signings or whatever. And whatever your dream is, you know, it's not going to be this big glorious thing every day or in the beginning. You're going to have to start small. One thing that I wrote down is the ministry across the street is just as important as the ministry across the world. Or put it this way, the person across the street is just as important as the person across the world. And so understand, when you're faithful in those little things, when you're faithful in small beginnings, you know, the Bible says, do not despise the small beginning and do not grow weary in well doing, for in due season you shall reap a harvest. And so just understand that again, don't feel insignificant if this big dream that you have doesn't look like that today, and if it's starting very, very small. it can grow to that. So just be thankful and just be faithful with what you have in front of you today. Again, do what you can where you are with what you have. That's all you have to do. And actually, I didn't talk about this. I have my list of resources here. I know I went through several of the books, but if you are in a place where you are struggling with getting started, if you're struggling with feeling like you need to be ready and things aren't perfect and whatever, if you're one of those people, again, Draw the Circle's great, but there's this book called The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, and it is fantastic. It's one of the best-selling success books of all time. I would recommend. It's pretty heady. It was actually a really difficult book for me to read the first time I picked it up. So if you're not a big reader, or if it's overwhelming to you like it was to me, just start in chapters 2, 12, and 13. And what David talks about is the 3 major failure diseases, he calls them. So the 3 main things that keep people from succeeding in whatever their dream or passion or calling or purpose is. And the 3 things, I'll go ahead and let you know, are procrastination, what he calls excuse-itis, so making excuses constantly for why you can't or why you aren't or why you won't or why it won't work or whatever. And then, oh wait, I forgot. Procrastination, excuse-itis, and detail-itis. So worrying about everything needing to be just so before you even get started. So understand that those 3 things literally are dream killers, dream crushers. They will not help you move towards your purpose. So if you tend to find yourself falling into one of those camps, whether you're often procrastinating, often making excuses, or often hung up on the details, details are good. I don't want to come at you guys like details aren't important, because they are. But sometimes you just need to get started. You just need to not worry about the details. You just need to jump out off the ledge, go for it, and get started. So just bear that in mind. So it has been good chatting with you guys this month. We are all done. I don't think I told you again at the beginning, but please, I'm telling you now, share this video on your own newsfeed. Please, 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 to get it out there to your friends and family. Share it now. If you haven't already commented and said, hey, comment to let me know that you're here. Like the video, share the video. I'll post all of the resources, all of the scriptures on the event page so that you guys have that. Do you guys have any questions for me right now? If you do, you can post them. I feel like there was something else I was going to tell you. I don't think that we're going to do, I know I'm not going to do a Real Talk in December. I don't think I'm going to do one in November either. So what I would love to do is to get a lot of feedback. Hey, Jess, get a lot of feedback from you guys about what are some of the next topics that you want to talk about. So I already know spiritual warfare is on the list, and that was a big popular one that a lot of people were interested in. But after that, we've kind of dwindled out the original topics that I had in mind. So what do you guys want to hear about? What do you want to talk about? What can I help you with? Let me know, message me, comment on here, comment on the event page, whatever you want to do. Hey, Lish, what's going on? I'm so excited that everybody's here. This is so fun. But yeah, let me know what you want to hear about, and we'll ramp back up in January. Also, this is the other thing. Yay, I remembered. I have already started putting speaking engagements on the calendar for 2018. And so if you're a part of a church or an organization or a group or a company, a corporation, retreat, conference, whatever, if you have any influence in any of those arenas where they're looking for a speaker, I speak in both corporate and religious or church environments. I can do either. Let me know. Reach out to me. Like I said, I'm already starting to book up for 2018. If you aren't already signed up for my mailing list, definitely join that. You can sign up on www.nowwhatstory.com, and it just pops right up. You can sign up for my mailing list, and that will get you kind of insider news on dates and events. And every time I do a Real Talk video, I email it out to my mailing list afterwards, so you'll get a copy of the Real Talk video, and things like that. You get you're the first to know about my new blog posts. All that stuff is all on my mailing list. So if you're not already a part of my mailing list, definitely join that. But I might pop in and do some short videos for you guys in November. But if I don't talk to you before the first of the year, Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a very Merry Christmas. The holidays are my favorite time of year, and so I hope that you guys get lots of good quality time with your families, and that you start reflecting on 2017, start making plans for 2018 to help you move towards your purpose and your passion and your dream. And whatever I can do to help you with that, please let me know. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.